Everybody, it's Hobie with the Hobie fishing team in Michigan and Summit Sports. Today what we're going to do is we're going to put a set of SuperNova fishing lights on my Hobie Outback. Doing this a little different today. I do not use my kayaks to fish at night a whole lot up in mid-Michigan. I want these so that I can be seen much better on the Great Lakes. A lot of boat traffic, a lot of people speeding around, and with the lower profile of this kayak, these lights should make it a lot more visible. What we have is the Extreme Kayak Kit. Has two 20-inch bow LED strips, two 10-inch stern LED strips, and four cabin LED strips with the switches. We have green LEDs, and the nice thing about these, they come with a fantastic set of directions and all the hardware and parts you need. Des did a really good job putting the directions together, and there's videos on YouTube. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use these primarily for probably 20 minutes in the morning and a few minutes at night. So I'm going to run them off of my fish finder battery. I'm not really worried about running the battery down because these won't be on that long. So what we've done is we've cleaned the front of the kayak off with some denatured alcohol. Make sure we've gotten all the release agents off of the kayak before we've done anything. Don't want to have anything that's not going to stick to it. What we're going to do is along the seam line here with the kayaks put together is where I want to mount these. So what I've done is I've come back, I've made a mark for the front spot. I'm going to lay these in place, and then I'll drill my hole where my wires are going to go into the kayak. One thing you want to make sure before you put these in any kayak is reach in, feel around, make sure you're not going to hit any cables or wires, because once you bust those, you're in trouble. So let's get started. So we have our first LED strip here, and we want to lay it at our starting position. Follow the contour down, and we're going to follow the directions to a T here. Once we get that laid out where we want, the directions say you want to mark about 1/4 of an inch past the end of your heat shrink tubing right here. So we're just going to put a little dot right there, okay? Then we'll double check it, flip it over. Looks pretty centered to me, and that's where our first hole is going to go for this side. I've already double checked inside. There's nothing on the other side of this, so we shouldn't run into any problems with hitting any wires or any cables. So we've got a nice sharp bit, and again, let the drill bit do the work, okay? It's got a little starter point here, so just go nice and easy. As soon as that drill bit goes through, you're going to stop drilling. Okay? Nice clean hole. That way when we put our silicone and stuff on there to make sure it's all waterproof, you're going to have a nice clean surface, okay? Just going to take the end of our wires, make sure everything's nice and straight, no twist, not a whole lot of kinks. It's just going to feed right through the hole. Again, don't force anything. You're working with small electrical wires and LEDs. Just make sure everything's nice and clean. Then you're going to get up to the end of that shrink tubing, and you're going to put it in. Double check our alignment. Looks pretty good. So we've got one side done. We'll switch over, we'll do the other side, and we'll go from there. Okay, now before we get too far with the wiring and stuff, this is the right side of the kayak. I want to test my lights. I want to make sure that they work before we start running wires that something's not going to work with. So I can just hook up the wires to the positive and negative end of my battery, and look at that sucker glow. I've already checked the other side. So we know everything's right there. Again, with the Outback, I have easy access. I've got 3 different points where I can reach inside the kayak, run my wires, check everything, make sure everything works good. So we're going to leave these as they are now because I don't want to adhere them in place until I get all my wires and stuff run and where I want to put my switches. That way, if I've done something wrong, it's easier to fix it before we adhere them. Once these things have adhered to the kayak with the adhesive packaging, they're really tough to get off. So make sure everything's exactly where you want it before you do anything else. Okay, what we're going to do now, we've got the lights that we want on the kayak. What we're going to do is we're going to build a power system for them. We have a deep cycle battery, 12 volt, 20 amp hours. What we're going to do is we're going to make 2 different power sources, one for lights, one for the fish finder. So what we have is 2 terminals like so. And what they'll do is we'll go hot to hot, cold to cold. And then we'll have a separate line running in for our power and for the fish finder, and separate power running in for our lights. That way we don't overtax anything. Nice big battery. Like I said, it's a lead cell sealed deep cycle battery. Okay, so we married up our wires because we have to do 2 sets of them. So I just stuck them together to make sure everything is good. Got our soldering gun hot. We've got our wires trimmed to the appropriate length. And what we're going to do is we're going to add these connectors on for our battery. These are heat shrink, so we're going to solder tip these, install them, and then we'll heat shrink this down, and then that way everything's going to be nice, waterproof, and secure. Okay, so now we're going to hook up our cables to our battery. We're going to go red to red, white to ground. So just make sure everything is nice and lined up. Now we're using is just our hardware that came with. So you've got a flat washer on each side, a lock washer. Make sure you keep everything separated so you don't grind anything out. Nice and tight. Go over to our ground. Actually, we gotta go from this side so we can tighten it. Make sure everything's nice and neat. And there you have it. Nice power supply that we can run fish finder and SuperNova fishing lights off of. Now, I'm not an electrical genius. I didn't come up with this. Des from SuperNova sent me some pictures. This is how he runs his system, which is really nice and neat. The battery's about $80, and you can find these little connections pretty much at any hardware store. And this way you can do it. So shout out to Des for all his help. Okay, so now we have our plugs that we're going to put into our power supply. I have gone ahead and installed my inline fuses. That one's for my fish finder, and this one is for the lights. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and run our wiring off of these that we're going to take up to our connections for all of our lights. Okay, so we have our heat shrink wrapped with electrical tape. This is our fish finder wire. And then here's our line we're going to run. About every foot or so, I've just wrapped a couple of pieces of tape just to kind of keep it nice and neat. We're going to feed this back through the kayak and then we'll get ready on the lights. Okay, so we run over wires. We have everything soldered, shrink tubed, ready to go. Hooked to our switch. Now what we're going to have to do is clean up a little bit of the wiring, make it nice and neat, and then we're going to come over here and I'm going to put a hole right here. I want my switch to power my lights and stuff on this side because I have my fish finder on that side. So we got a hole drilled in, see what it looks like, clean up the wires and give it a go. Okay, so we got our toggle switch installed right here. Nice rubber cap for the top. And they're good. Just follow the directions on the 1/2-inch drill bit. Made sure I reached underneath 3 or 4 times to make sure that I didn't have any cables that I was going to hit because of the rudder system in the kayak. And then you look down in here. Got my wires all bundled up, nice and strapped down, taped down to the bottom of the kayak so everything is protected. So what we have is we have one of the small strips here. This is inside of my mesh pockets. We have the 10-inch on the back. We have the 20-inch on the front. Here's our dual power source that we ran. One is for the lights. One is for the fish finder. So let's give it a try and see what we got. Little flip of the switch. And we have a nice set of SuperNova lights. Nice and bright. And then turn on our fish finder. Ignore the fire truck in the background. Fish finder works. Fish finder powers up. Again, I'm not an electrical genius by any means. I had a couple of boo-boos that I had to correct. But hopefully this video will help you if you do it yourself. Again, I called Des. Des walked me through a couple of problems I had since he's the designer. And we're going to get this bad boy out on Lake St. Clair this week. See if we can catch some nice smallmouth out of it. So hopefully this helped you out. If you have any questions, I'm Paul Biediger with the Hobie fishing team in Michigan. You can look me up on Facebook. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. Thanks.